samsaradava nalalita loka tranaya karuna gana ganatvam praptasya kayana gunanavasya vande guru shri charanaravinda
praptasya kayana gunanavasya vande guru shri charanaravinda
Mahaprabhu kirtana nitya gita vaditra madhyan manasorasena
Mahaprabhu kirtana nitya gita vaditra madhyan manasorasena
romanchakam pashutarangavajo vande guru shri charanaravinda Shri Vigrahara Dana Nityananam Shringarathan Mandiram Arjanado Yuktasya bhaktam stanyanjatopi Vande Guru Shri Charanaravinda Chaturvida Shri Bhagavat Prasado Swadana Triptan Hari Bhaksha Sangram
Chaturveda Shri Bhagavat Prasado Swadana Triptan Hari Bhaksha Sangram
Kritraiva Triptim Bhajata Sadaiva Vande Guru Shri Charanaravinda Shri Radhika Madhava Yorapara Madhurya Leela Ganarupa Namna Pratikshanasvadanalolupasya Vande Guru Shri Charanaravinda Vande Guru Shri Charanaravinda Vande Guru Shri Charanaravinda
Vande Guru Shri Charanaravinda Vande Guru Shri Charanaravinda
Nikunjayono Ratikeli Siddhai Yayali Viryakti Rapikshaniya Tatrati Daksha Ativalabhasya Vande Guru Shri Charanaravindam. Sakshadaritvena samasta shastre uktastatha bhayata eva sadvir. Kinto praborya priya eva tasya Vande Guru Shri Charanaravindam.
Vande Guru Shri Charanaravindam.
Yasya prasada bhagavat prasado Yasya prasada nagati kutopi
Yasya prasada bhagavat prasada Yasya prasada nagati kutopi
Jayam stuvam stasaya satri sadyam Vande Guru Shri Charanaravindam.
Jayam stuvam stasaya satri sadyam Vande Guru Shri Charanaravindam.
Vande Guru Shri Charanaravindam. Vande Guru Shri Charanaravindam. Vande Guru Shri Charanaravindam. Vande Guru Shri Charanaravindam. Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine. Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Sunyavadi Pastatya Deshatarine. Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Chaitanya Nityananda Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda
Jaya Shri Krishna
Chaitanya Nityananda Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Chaitanya Nityananda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare
Hare Krishna
Krishna
Krishna Krishna
Hare Hare Rama
Rama Rama Hare Hare
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Krishna
Krishna Krishna Hare Hare
Hare Hare
Hare Rama
Rama
Rama Rama Hare Hare
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare Hare
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Hare Hare
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare
Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare
Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare.
Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram,
Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram,
Jaya Radha, Nilamadva Radha, Nilamadva Radhe. Jaya Radhe, Jaya Radhe, Jaya Radhe, Jaya Shri Radhe. Jai Radhe, Jaya Jagannatha, Jaya Baladeva, Jaya Subhadrama, Jaya Sudarshan Chakra.
Jaya Jagannatha, Jaya Baladeva, Subhadrama, Jaya Sudarshan Chakra.
Jaya Sitaram, Jaya Sitaram, Sitaram, Jaya Lakshman Hanuman.
Jaya Sitaram, Sitaram, Jaya Lakshman.
Jaya Lakshmi Narasingha, Jaya Lakshmi Narasingha, Lakshmi Narasingha, Jaya Lakshmi Narasingha.
Jaya Lakshmi Narasingha, Jaya Lakshmi Narasingha, Jaya Lakshmi Narasingha, Jaya Lakshmi Narasingha.
Jaya Gauranitai, Jaya Gauranitai, Gauranitai, Jaya Gauranitai. Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada.
Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada.
Jaya Gurudeva, Jaya Gurudeva, Gurudeva, Jaya Gurudeva.
Jaya Gurudeva, Gurudeva, Jaya Gurudeva.
Nitai Gaura Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nitai Gaura Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nitai Gaura Hari Bol.
Jai Vishnu Pada Paramita Parvajagacharya Sutara Srasi Shimad Iskon Pratishta Bhiviti Samstapakachar Vaishnav Siromani Gora Priyajana Krishna Prema Bhakti Dakta Patita Pavana Abhay Charamina Bhakti Vedanta Swami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Iskon Pratishta Bhiviti Samstapakachar Srila Prabhupada Ji Maharaj Ki Jai Shri Gaurya Guru Vargapati Udhari Ki Jai Shri Rupa Sanatana Bhakti Raghunath Shri Jiva Gopala Bhakti Das Guru Sat Goswami Prabhu Ki Jai Namacharya Shri Hari Ras Thakur Ji Ki Jai Jayananta Koti Vaishnavrind Ki Jai प्रेम से कहो श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवसरि गौर भक्तवृंद की जय। जय परम दयाल श्री नित्यानंद प्रभु की जय। प्रेम नाम संकीर्तन के जनक प्रेम पुरुषोत्तम श्री सच्चिदानंद स्मरण गौरंग श्री चैतन्य महाप्रभु गौर हरि मवरण अवतार की जय। गोलोकेर प्रमधान हरि नाम संकीर्तन जग की जय। जुग धर्म हरे कृष्ण महामंत्र की जय। Prihabdanga Translator Book Distribution Seva की जय। श्री श्री राधा कृष्ण गोप नरधा कुंड समकुंड गिरिराज गोवर्धन की जय। श्री ब्रजभूमि वृंदावन मथुरा धाम की जय। तलोच श्री श्री राधा नील माधव की जय। श्री मय पूर्णपति के चक्र धाम की जय। परम करुण श्री श्री गौर निताय की जय। श्री पुरुषोत्तम चित्र जगन्नाथपुरी धाम की जय। श्री श्री जगन्नाथ स्वामी बलदेव प्रभु स्मृति देवी सुदर्शन चक्र भगवान की जय। भक्त सर्विक विघ्न विनाशन कन सिंहरे भगवान की जय। गंगा माई जमुना माई की जय। तुलसी महारानी वृंद देवी भक्ति देवी की जय। श्री मथुरा रानी की जय। समवेत भक्त वृंद की जय। निताय गौरी प्रमानंदे हरि बोल। All glory to somebody bodies. All glory to somebody bodies. All glory to somebody bodies. All glory to glory to Shri Shri Guru Shri Gauranga. Namaste Narasingaya. Namaste Narasingaya. Pralada lada da haine. Pralada lada da haine. Hiranyakasipur vaksha Hiranyakasipur vaksha Silatangkanaka laye Jaya Silatangkanaka laye Ito nisingo parato nisinga Jato jato jami tato nisinga Bairi nisinga Rudaye nisinga Narasingha Madim Sharanam Prapade Abakara Kamala Bare Naka Adavuta Stinga Dalita Hiranyakasipu Manabringa Kesavadeka Narahari Rupa Jai Jagadisa Jai Jagadisa Jai Jagadisa Kesavadita Naradi Rupa Jai Jagadisha Re Jai Jagadisha Re Jai Jagadisha Re Kesavadita Naradi Rupa Jai Jagadisha Re Jaya Nisingare, Jaya Nisingare, Nisingare, Jaya Nisingare. Jaya Narahari, Jaya Narahari, Narahari, Jaya Narahari. Jayo Lakshmi Narasingha Jayo Lakshmi Narasingha Jayo Lakshmi Narasingha Jayo Lakshmi Narasingha Jayo Bhakta Prahlad Prahlad Maharaj Bhakta Prahlad Jayo Prahlad Maharaj Nitai Gora Haribo, 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 Nitai Gora Haribo. Jai Shri Bhakti Pada Salpik Nashana Kari Singare Bhagavan Ki Jai Bhakta Shrestha Prahlad Maharaj Ki Jai Nitai Gaurari Premanande Hari Hari Bo Shri Vrindai Tulasi Vai Piyai Kesava Satya Vishnu Bhakti Pradi Devi Shatavataye Namo Namaha Vrindayai Tulasi Vai Priyai Kesava Satya Vishnu Bhakti Pradi Devi Shatavataye Namo Namaha Vrindayai Tulasi Devai Priyai Kesava Satya Vishnu Bhakti Pradi Devi Sattavataye Namo Namaha Srimati Tulasi Maharani Vrinda Devi Ki
Tulasi Krishna Preyasi Namo Namaha Tulasi Krishna Preyasi Namo Namaha Radha Krishna Seva Pabo Hey Abhilashi Radha Krishna Seva Pavo Hey Abhilashi Radha Krishna Seva Pavo Eya Bilashi
Radha Krishna Seva Pavo Eya Bilasi
Je tomar sharan loy Tara bancha purna hoye
Je tomar sharanala Tara vancha purna
Kripa kori koro tare Vrindavana vasi
Tumi kripa kori karatare Vrindavana vasi
Morae abhila Bilas kunj diyo ba
Morae avila Vilas kunje diyama
Ayane rivo sada Juglal ruparasi
Aminayane viva sada Jugalana ruparasi
Vedana dhara Sakhiranugata koro
Eni vedana dhara
Sakhiranugata koro Sevadikara diye Karo nijadasi
Seva yadi kara diye Tarani jadasi
Nina Krishna dase koi ye namura hoy Krishna dase koi ye namura Shri Radha Govinda preme sada jena bhasi
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 Tulasi Krishna preyasi namo namah
Tulasi Krishna preyasi namo namah
Yani kani cha papani Brahma hatyadhikani cha Tani tani pranashanti Pradakshina pade pade
Jani kani sabapani Brahma hatyadhikani sa Tani tani pranashanti
Pradakshina pade pade Yani kani cha papani brahma hatyadhikani cha Tani tani pranashanti pradakshina pade pade
Jani kani sabapani Brahma hatyadhikani sa Tani tani pranashanti pradakshina pade pade
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare
Krishna,
Krishna,
Krishna Krishna, Hare
Hare
Hare,
Hare, Hare Rama,
Hare
Hare Rama, Rama
Hare Hare.
Jaya Tulsi Maharani, Jaya Tulsi Maharani, Jaya Tulsi Maharani, Jaya Tulsi Maharani,
Jaya Tulsi Maharani, Jaya Vrindavan. Jaya Tulsi Maharani, Jaya Vrindavan.
Jaya Vrinda Devi, Vrinda Devi, Vrinda Devi, Jaya Vrinda Devi, Jaya Vrinda Devi, Jaya Vrinda Devi, Jaya Vrinda Devi. Nitai Gaura Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Bol, Nitai Gaura Hari Bol,
Nitai Gaura Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nitai Gaura Hari Bol.
Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada,
Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada.
Jaya Jaya Gurudev, 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 Jaya Jaya Gurudev,
Jaya Jaya Gurudev, 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 Jaya Jaya Gurudev. Shri Vrindai Tulasi Bai Priya Kesava Satya Vishnu Bhakti Prade Devi Shatavataye Namo Namaha. Vrindai Tulasi Bai Priya Kesava Satya Vishnu Bhakti Prade Devi Shatavataye Namo Namaha. Vrindayai Tulasi Devai Priyayai Kesava Satya Vishnu Bhakti Prade Devi Sattavataye Namo Namaha. Jai Shrimati Tulasi Maharani Vrinda Devi Ki Jai.
Beloved of Krishna, I bow before you.
To attend the service of Shri Radha and Krishna, where we take shelter of your wishes fulfilled, bestow your mercy upon him, making residence of Vrindavan. I desire that you also give me a residence in pleasure groves of Shri Vrindavan Dham. Thus, within my vision, I will always behold the beautiful pastimes of Radha and Krishna. I beg you to make me a follower of Kavadhyams of Raj. Please give me the privilege of devotional service and make me your own maid servant. This very fallen and lowly servant of Krishna praise. May I always swim in love. Shri Radha Govinda. Shri Mati Tulasi Maharani Vrinda Devi Ki Jai. Shri Chaitanya Astakam Ki Jai. Chaito Brahmanamajana Pavamadavani Nivapanam Shri Akari Vachandrika Vitaranam Vidya Vadu Jivanam Ananda Mudi Vardhanam Pradipadam Purnam Tasadanam Sarvatmasnam Param Paramijayati Shri Krishna Sankirtanam Nam Namakari Vaudha Nirajasarva Shaktis Tatrat Pita Niyamitta Shmarane Nakara Durdhaivam Idrisham Yadani Nanuraga Trinarapi Sunichena Tarorapi Saishuna Amanina Manadina Kirtaniya Sadahari Nadhanam Nadanam Nasundarim Kavitamba Jaganisha Kamai Amajanmani Janmanishwari Bhavatar Bhakti Rahituki Tvai Oinanda Tanuja Kinkaram Paritama Visame Bhavam Buddho Krupaya Tava Pada Pankaja Stitaduli Sadrisham Vichintaya Nayanam Galorashrudharaya Padanam Gadugadarudhaya Gira Pulakharinchitam Vapukada Tavanama Grahane Bhavisyati Yoga Itam Nimishena Shakrisha Prarusha Itam Shunya Itam Jagata Sarvam Govinda Virahena Me Asli Shabapa Daratam Pinastumam Adarshnar marmahatam karotu va Jata tathava viradhatulam patu mat pranatastu saivana param. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu Shri Kristakam ki jai. Namo Mahavaranaya Krishna Prema Pradayati Krishna Krishna Chaitanya Namine Guru Tvishe Namaha. Glory to the Shri Krishna Sankirtana, which cleanses the heart of the dust accumulated for years and extinguishes the fiery condition of life of repeated birth and death. This Sankirtan movement is the prime benediction for humanity at large because it spreads the rays that benediction will. It is the life of all transcendental knowledge. It increases the ocean of transcendental bliss and enables us to fully taste the nectar for which always anxious. O my Lord, your holy name alone can render all benediction to living beings, and thus you have hundreds and millions of names like Krishna and Govind. In these transcendental names, you have invested all your transcendental energy. There is not even hard and fast rules for chanting these names. O my Lord, out of kindness, you enable us to easily approach you by holy names, but I'm so unfortunate that I have no attraction for them. Once you chant the holy name of the Lord in a humble state of mind, thinking oneself Lord and straw in the street, one should be more tolerant than a tree, devoid of all sense of false prestige, and should be ready to offer respect to others. In such state of mind, one can chant the holy name of the Lord constantly. O Almighty Lord, I have no desire to accumulate wealth, nor do I desire beautiful women, nor do I want any number of followers. I only want your godly devotion service, birth after birth. O son of Maharaj Nanda Krishna, I am your eternal servitor. Yet somehow or other I am fallen in this ocean of birth and death. Please bring me out from this ocean of death and place me as one of the atoms at your lotus feet. O my Lord, when will my eyes be decorated with tears of love flowing constantly when I chant your holy name? When will my voice choke up? And will the hairs of my body stand on the end of the recitation of your name? O Govinda, feeling your separation, I am considering a moment to be like 12 years or more. Tears are flowing from my eyes like torrents of rain, and I'm feeling all vacant in the world in your absence. I know no one but Krishna is my Lord, and he should remain so, even if his hand is me roughly by his embrace, or makes me broken-hearted by not being present before me. He is completely free to do anything and everything, but is always my worshipful Lord, unconditionally. Okay, there are 10 offenses in the matter of chanting the holy name of the Lord that should be avoided. They are as follows. 1. To blaspheme his devotees who dedicate their life for propagating the holy name of the Lord. 2. To consider names of the demigods, our Lord Shiva and Lord Brahma, to be equal to or independent of the name Lord Vishnu. 3. To disobey the orders of the spiritual master. 4. To blaspheme the Vedic literatures or literatures and pursuits of Vedic liberation. 5. To consider the glories of chanting Hare Krishna to be imagination. 6. To give some interpretation to the holy name of the Lord. 7. To commit sinful activities on the strength of chanting the holy name of the Lord. 8. To consider the chanting of Hare Krishna as one of the auspicious ritualistic activities which are offered in Vedas as fruitive activity, karma kanda. 9. To instruct the faithless person by the glories of the holy name. And 10. Do not have complete faith in chanting of the holy names and to maintain material attachments, even of understanding so many instructions in this matter. It is also an offense to be inattentive while chanting. Every devotee who claims to be Vaishnava must carefully guard against 10 offenses in order to quickly achieve the desired success, Krishna Prema. Now let us offer our most humble obeisance to all the Vaishnavas devoted to the Lord. They are just like desired trees, they can fulfill their desires for everyone, and are full of compassion for the fallen, conditioned souls. Bancha
Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Vaishnava Thakur Ki Jai Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutali Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Namaste Saraswati Devi Guru Vani Prachari Nirvisesa Sunyava Paskatya Rasatari Shri Guru Pranama Prayers Ki Jai Om Naganyatandasya Gyananjana Salakaya Chaksurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manubhistam Sapritam Yena Bhutali Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Jataha Padikam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamsa Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahaguna Raghunatan Vitam Tam Sajivam Saidvaitam Savadutam Parijana Paitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Radita Shri Vishaka Nivitam Sha Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swamini Tinamine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvisesa Sunyavadi Paskatya Desatarine Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Tinamine Shri Varsavanavi Devi Daitaya Kripabdaye Krishna Sambandha Vijnana Dayane Prabhave Namaha Madhur Ujjvala Premadya Shri Rupanuga Bhaktida Shri Gora Karuna Shakti Vigrahaya Namastate Namaste Gauravani Shri Murtaye Dinatarine Rupanuga Virudapa Apasiddhanta Dvantaharine Namo Gora Kishoraya Shakshad Vairagya Murtaye Vipralambara Sambhade Padambujayate Namaha Namo Bhakti Vinodaya Sachitananda Namine Gora Shakti Swarupaya Rupanuga Varayate Gora Vir Bhava Bhumestvam Nirdesta Sajjana Priya Vaishnava Sarvabhuma Shri Jagannatayate Namaha Manchakampa Rabhyascha Kripasundubhye Vacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Namo Mahavadanyaya Krishna Prema Padayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Lamne Gurichuse Namaha Panchatattvatmakam Krishnam Bhakta Rupas Rupam Bhaktavataram Bhaktakyam Namami Bhakta Saktikam Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopisha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Jayatam Surator Pangur Mama Manda Mater Gati Matsarva Swapadambo Radha Madana Mohano Divyad Vindaranya Kalpadrumadaha Shimad Ratnakara Simhasanastito Shimad Radha Shila Govinda Devo Prastali Bihi Sevyamanos Marami Shiman Rasa Rasaram Bivam Sivata Tatastita Karsal Venus Vanergo Pir Upinatak Striyeshtuna Tapta Kanchana Gorangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Rishabhanustute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Jai Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Shri Guru Pranama prayers ki jai Shri Brahma Samhita ki jai Shwara Parama Krishna Sachitananda Vigraha Nadiradi Govinda Sarvakarana Karanam Chintamani Prakara Satmasukalpa Vriksha Laksha Vridesu Surabhira Vibali Antam Lakshmi Sahasra Satasambrahma Sevyamanam Govindam Adipurisham Tamaham Bhajami Venum Konantam Aravinda Dalayataksham Barhavatam Samasitam Buddha Sundarangam Kandarpa Gotikamaniya Visesa Sobham Govindam Adipurisham Tamaham Bhajami Alola Chandra Kalasadvanam Ayavam Siratnam Gidam Pranayakili Kalavilasam Shamam Tribangalalita Nita Prakasam Govindam Adipurisham Tamaham Bhajami Angani Yasya Sakilandriya Vrittimanti Pasyanti Panti Kalyanti Chiram Jaganti Ananda Chinmaya Sadujvala Vigrahasya Govindam Adipurisham Tamaham Bhajami Advaitam Achyutam Anadim Ananta Rupam Adyam Purana Purisham Navayovanam Cha Vedesa Durlabam Adurlabam Atma Bhakto Govindam Adipurisham Tamaham Bhajami Pantastukoti Satavatsara Sampragamyo Vayora Tapi Manasomuni Punkamanam Sopyasti Yat Prapadasimya Vichintya Tatve Govindam Adipurisham Tamaham Bhajami Ekopya Sora Chayatam Jagaranda Kotim Yas Chakti Rasti Jagaranda Chayayadanta Dantarasta Paramanu Chayantarastam Govindam Adipurisham Tamaham Bhajami Yat Bhava Bhavita Deyo Manajastataiva Samprapya Rupa Mahima Sanayana Busa Suktarya Meva Nigama Pratitaistuvanti Govindam Adipurisham Tamaham Bhajami Ananda Chinmaya Rasa Pratibhavita Bistabirya Eva Nijarupa Mataya Kalabi Goloka Even Vasata Kilatma Bhuto Govinda Madi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Pramanjana Churita Bhakti Viluchanena Santaksa Deva Hidesa Vilokayanti Yam Shama Sundaram Achintya Gunaswarupam Govinda Madi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Ramadi Murti Sukalani Menatistana Avatar Makarod Bhuvane Sukintu Krishna Swayam Samabhavat Paramam Pumam Yo Govinda Adi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Yasya Prabha Prabhavato Jagananda Koti Koti Svasesa Vasudadi Vibhuti Bina Tad Brahma Niskalam Anantam Ashesa Bhutam Govinda Adi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Maya Yasya Jagananda Satani Sute Trigun Yatad Vishaya Veda Vitaya Manam Sattva Valambi Parasatvam Visuddha Sattvam Govinda Adi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Ananda Chinmaya Rasat Matayamana Suya Praninam Patifalam Smaratam Upetya Lilaya Tena Bhavanani Jaya Yajastram Govinda Adi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Goloka Namni Nijadamni Tale Chitasya Devi Maheso Hadidama Sute 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 Te Prabhavani Jaya Vitasya Yena Govinda Adi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Shististati Pralaya Sada Vasakti Reka Jayeva Yasya Bhuvanani Vivarti Durga Ichana Rupam Vyasya Chachestate Sa Govinda Adi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Shiram Yata Dadi Vikara Visesi Yoga Sanjayate Nahitata Pritakasti Hetu Yasam Bhutama Pitatasam Apaitikaya Govinda Adi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Deparcharev Hita Santanam Abhyupetya Dipayate Vivita Hetu Samanu Dharma Yastadvikeva Hicha Vishnu Taya Vibhati Govinda Adi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Akarna Narna Vajale Bhajatisma Yoga Nidram Ananta Jagananda Saroma Kupaha Adhara Saktim Avalamyam Param Smaruritim Govinda Adi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Yasyaika Nisrasita Kalamatavalamya Jivanti Loma Vilaja Jagananda Nata Vishnur Mahansa Yasya Kala Vishesho Govinda Adi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Basman Yasasma Yakskalesuni Tesha Jayam Priya Prakatayat Apitadvatatra Brahmaya Esa Jagananda Vidana Karta Govinda Adi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Yat Pada Palava Yugam Vinitaya Kumbha Dwande Pranama Samayesa Kanadi Raja Vignan Vidhantam Alamasya Jagatrayasya Govinda Adi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Agnir Mahiga Ganamambu Marudisascha Kalasta Tatma Manasiti Jagatrayani Yasmad Bhavanti Vibhavanti Visanti Yamcha Govinda Adi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Yaschak Suresa Savitasa Kilagrahanam Raja Samasta Suramurti Rasesa Tejaha Yasyagaya Brahmati Sambrita Kala Chakra Govinda Adi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Dharmota Papa Nichaya Sutayasta Pamsi Brahmadi Kita Patagava Dayasta Jiva Haya Data Matra Vibhava Prakata Bhava Govinda Adi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Falabhajana Matanoti Karmani Nirdahati Kintu Jabakti Bhajam Govinda Adi Purisham Tamaham Bhajam Yam Kroda Kamasa Japranayadi Bitti Vatsalya Moha Guru Guru Sevya Bhava Sanchintya Tasha Sadrisim Tamapurete Govinda Adi Purisham Tamaham Bhajam Sriya Kanta Kanta Parama Purusha Kalpatarava Jumabha Mishchintamani Ganama Ito Yamamritam Kataga Anam Natyam Gamanama Pivam Sipriyasaki Chidanandam Jati Param Apitadaswadyam Apitasaya Trasjiradi Stravati Surabhi Vyasta Suman Nimesar Dakyava Rajati Nahiya Trapi Samaya Bajay Swita Dutam Tamaham Ihagolokamiti Yam Vidantaste Santakshiti Virakati Paya Iswara Parama Krishna Sachitananda Vigraha Nadiradi Govinda Sarva Karana Karanam Shri Brahma Samhita Ki Jai Shri Guru Vastika prayers Ki Jai. The spiritual masters receiving benediction from the ocean of mercy. Just as a cloud pours water on the forest right to extinguish it, so the spiritual master delivers the materially afflicted world by extinguishing the blazing fire of material existence. I offer my respectful obeisance to Lotus Feet of such a spiritual master. Chanting the holy names, dancing in ecstasy, singing and playing musical instruments, the spiritual master is always gladdened by the Sankirtan movement of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Because he is relishing the mellows of pure devotion within his mind, sometimes his hair stands on end, he feels quivering in his body, and tears fall from his eyes like waves. I offer my respectful obeisance to Lotus Feet of such a spiritual master. The spiritual master is always engaged in the temple worship of Shisha, Radha, and Krishna. He also engages his disciples in such worship. They dress the deities in beautiful clothes and ornaments, clean their temple, and perform other similar worship of the Lord. I offer my respectful obeisance to the Lotus Feet of such spiritual master. Spiritual master is always offering Krishna 4 kinds of delicious food, analyzes that which is lit, chewed, drunk, and sucked. When the spiritual master sees that the devotees are satisfied by eating Bhagavad Prasada, he is satisfied. I offer my respectful obeisance to the Lotus Feet as such a spiritual master. The spiritual master is always eager to hear and chant about the unlimited conjugal pastimes of Radhika and Madhava and their qualities, names, and more. The spiritual master aspires desires to relish these at every moment. I offer my respectful obeisance unto the Lotus Street as such a spiritual master. The spiritual master is very dear because he is expert at assisting the gopis who at different times make different tasteful arrangements for the perfection of Radha and Krishna's conjugal loving affairs within the groves of Vrindavan. I offer my most humble obeisances unto the Lotus Street as such a spiritual master. The spiritual master is to be honored as much as the Supreme Lord because he is the most confidential servitor of the Lord. This is acknowledged in all revealed scriptures and followed by all authorities. Therefore, I offer my respectful obeisance unto the Lotus Street as such a spiritual master is a bona fide representative of Sri Hare Krishna. By the mercy of the spiritual master, one receives the benediction of Krishna. Without the grace of the spiritual master, one cannot make any advancement. Therefore, I should always remember and praise the spiritual master and offer my respectful obeisance unto the Lotus Street as such a spiritual master is a bona fide representative of Sri Hare Krishna. By the mercy of the spiritual master, one receives the benediction of Krishna. Without the grace of the spiritual master, one cannot make any advancement. Therefore, I should always remember and praise the spiritual master at least 3 times a day. I should offer my respectful obeisance unto the Lotus Street of my spiritual master, his divine grace. A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 1, verse, or text number 37. Kimva katagesh vagam at yamarsi bimo hivadir gatamam vyamunchat yasyangripatam ranaburna sehe Margam Gadayas Charato Vichitram. Kim, whether, Va, either, Krita, perform, Agesu, unto the sinners, Agam, angry, Atiyamarsi, unconquerable, Bima, Ahivat, like a cobra, Dirgatamam, long cherished, Vyamunchat, has released, Yasya, whose, Angripatam, putting on the steps, Ranabu, the field of battle, Na, could not, Sehe, tolerate, Margam, the path, Gadaya, by the clubs, Charata, playing, Vichitram, wonderful. Translation by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Please tell me whether the unconquerable Bhima, who is like a cobra, has released his long-cherished anger upon the sinners. The field of battle could not tolerate even the wonderful playing of his club when he stepped on the path. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Vidura knew the strength of Bhima. Whenever Bhima was on the battlefield, his steps on the path and the wonderful playing of his club were unbearable for the enemy. Powerful Bhima did not take steps against the sons of Dhritarashtra for a long time. Vidura's inquiry was whether he had yet released his anger, which was like that of a suffering cobra. When a cobra releases its venom after long-cherished anger, its victim cannot survive. Text 38. Kaschit Yasoda Rata Yutapanam Gandiva Danvo Patar Tarhiraste Alakshito Yaj Charakuta Gudo Maya Kirato Kirisas Tutosa Kashchit, whether, Yashada, famous, Rata Yutapanam, amongst the great chariot warriors, Gandiva, Danava, bow, Uparata Uri, one who has vanquished the enemies, Aste, doing well, Alakshita, without being identified, Yat, whose, Shara Kuta Gudha, being covered by arrows, Maya Kirata, false hunter, Girisha, Lord Shiva, to Tosha was satisfied. Translation by Srila Prabhupada. Please tell me whether Arjuna, whose bow bears the name Gandiva, and who was always famous amongst the chariot warriors for vanquishing his enemies, is doing well. He once satisfied Lord Shiva by covering him with arrows when Shiva came as an unidentified false hunter. Purport by His Divine Grace. Lord Shiva tested Arjuna's strength by picking a quarrel with him over a hunted boar. He confronted Arjuna in the false dress of a hunter, and Arjuna covered him with arrows until Lord Shiva was satisfied with Arjuna's fighting. He offered Arjuna the Pasupati weapon and blessed him. Here Vidura inquired about the great warrior's well-being. Text 39. Yamav utasvit tanayo pritaya partai rito pakshmabir akshiniva Remata udaya mride swariktam Bharat Suparnav iva vajrivaktrat Yamo Nakula and Sahadeva Utasvit weather Tanayo sons Pritaya of Prita Partai by the sons of Prita Rito protected Pakshmabi by shields Akshini of the eyes Eva like remate playing carelessly Udaya snatching Mride in the fight Svariktam own property Parat from the enemy Duryodhana Suparno Garuda the carrier of Lord Vishnu Eva like Vajri Vaktrat from the mouth of Indra are the twin brothers, translation by Srila Prabhupada, are the twin brothers who are protected by their brothers doing well? Just as the eye is always protected by the eyelid, they are protected by the sons of Prita, who snatched back their rightful kingdom from the hands of their enemy Duryodhana. Just as Garuda snatched nectar from the mouth of Indra, the thunderbolt carrier. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Indra, the king of heaven, carries a thunderbolt in his hand and is very strong. Yet, Garuda, the carrier of Lord Vishnu, was able to snatch nectar from his mouth. Similarly, Duryodhana was as strong as the king of heaven, and still the sons of Prita, the Pandavas, were able to snatch away their kingdom from Duryodhana. Both Garuda and the Parthas are pet devotees of the Lord, and thus it is possible for them to face such strong enemies. Vidura's inquiry was about the youngest brothers of the Pandavas, namely Nakula and Sahadeva. These twin brothers were sons of Madri, the stepmother of the other Pandavas. But although they were stepbrothers, because Kunti took charge of them after the departure of Madri with her husband Maharaj Pandu, Nakula and Sahadeva were as good as the other three Pandavas, Yudhishthira, Bhima, and Arjuna. The five brothers are known in the world as regular brothers. The three elder Pandavas took care of the younger brothers, just as the eyelid takes care of the eye. Vidura was anxious to know whether, after winning back their own kingdom from the hands of Duryodhana, the younger brothers were still living happily under the care of the elder brothers. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Text 40. Aho pritapi driyate rabakarte Raja Shivaryena Vinapitena Yastveka Viro Dirato Vijigye Danur Dvitiya Kakubas Chatasra Aho, O my Lord, Prita, Kunti, Api, also, Driyate, bears her life. Arbaka Arte, for the sake of fatherless children. Rajashri, King Pandu, Varyena, the best. Vina Api, without him. Tena, him. Ya, one who. Two, but. Eka, alone. Vira, the warrior. Adirataha, commander. Vijigye, could conquer. Danu, the bow. Dvitiya, the second. Kakuba, directions. Chatasra, four. Translation by Srila Prabhupada. O my Lord, is Prita still living? She lived only for the sake of her fatherless children. Otherwise, it was impossible for her to live without King Pandu, who was the greatest commander and who alone conquered the four directions simply with the help of a second bow. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. A faithful wife cannot live without her Lord, the husband, and therefore all widows used to voluntarily embrace the burning fire which consumed the dead husband. This system was very common in India because all the wives were chaste and faithful to their husbands. Later on, with the advent of the age of Kali, the wives gradually began to be less adherent to their husbands, and the voluntary embrace of the fire by the widows became a thing of the past. Very recently, this system was abolished, since the voluntary system had become a forcible social custom. When Maharaja Pandu died, both his wives, namely Kunti and Madri, were prepared to embrace the fire, but Madri requested Kunti to live for the sake of the younger children, the 5 Pandavas. This was agreed upon by Kunti at the added request of Yasadeva. In spite of her great bereavement, Kunti decided to live, not to enjoy life in the absence of her husband, but only to give protection to the children. This incident is referred to here by Vidura because he knew all the facts about his sister-in-law Kunti Devi. It is understood that Maharaja Pandu was a great warrior and that he alone, with the help of bow and arrow, could conquer the world's 4 directions. In the absence of such a husband, it was almost impossible for Kunti to live on even as a widow, but she had to do it for the sake of the 5 children. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. So, there are many nice points in these verses. I just want to cover some of them. The main point is that if one is a devotee of the Lord, then the Lord can empower his devotees to do things that are seemingly impossible, such as snatching nectar from the lips of Indra by Garuda, and also the ability of the Pandavas to defeat Duryodhana and the Kauravas, which seemed impossible because the Pandavas were far outnumbered. Duryodhana had a much bigger army and had such people as Bhisma Pitamaha, who was invincible, and Duryodhana, and Dronacharya, who was the guru of the Pandavas and the Kurus, and he was superior to them in fighting. But both of them were defeated. And in the case of Bhisma Pitamaha, it was very interesting. Arjuna asked permission from Bhisma Pitamaha to kill him. And he had to hear from Bhisma Pitamaha how to kill him. So both things, and plus Arjuna was trained in using military weapons by Dronacharya. So it was impossible for him to defeat those two, but he was able to do it by Krishna's mercy, and even the mercy of Bhisma Pitamaha. So we see that devotees, although they might be not equal in power or wealth or intelligence as others, they're able to defeat them by the mercy of Krishna. And Prabhupada also said he was able to defeat the modern scientists because he had absolute faith that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And the scientists, of course, almost all of them don't believe in God. So this is very interesting, and we should be very careful to understand the power of becoming a devotee. Not that we misuse the power for our own sense gratification. Most people, when they have power, they misuse it to exploit others and have sense gratification. So, not only do the devotees receive these abilities, but even some of the most fallen persons in the world, as soon as they become genuine devotees, they're able to do things that are seemingly impossible. So today I'm going to read a very exceptional case of this. And, of course, there's this verse in the Bhagavad Gita, 9th chapter, 32nd verse, which says, Mam hi partha vipasrita yepi su papayonaha striya vaishas tatasudras tepiyanti param gatim. O son of Prita, those who take shelter in me, though they be of lower birth, women, Vaishyas or merchants, and Sudras, workers, can attain the supreme destination. Now, this is considered by a person who has studied feminism to be a very offensive verse to women. There are even devotees, even members of the GBC, that consider this translation offensive. But now I'm going to show you why people who do not carefully read the Shastras arrive at these absolutely wrong conclusions. And this is very, very prevalent today, even in ISKCON. People don't read Prabhupada's books, therefore they begin to make false conclusions, and they try and change the philosophy, thinking that they're doing the right thing, but actually they're doing a very serious offense against Prabhupada by changing his words. So, if we look at the first canto, 10th chapter, 30th verse of Srimad Bhagavatam, which says, all these women auspiciously glorified their lives despite their being without individuality and without purity. Their husband, the lotus-eyed personality of Godhead, never left them alone at home. He always pleased their hearts by making valuable presentations. So, who is he talking about here? 1:10:30. Srimad Bhagavatam, 1st canto, 10th chapter, 30th verse. He's talking about the princesses who were kidnapped by Bhaumasura and most probably defiled by him on a regular basis while they're in captivity. So in the purport it says, all these women auspiciously glorified their lives despite their being without individuality and without purity. Individuality means they have no freedom at all. They're being exploited by a demon. So, Prabhupada writes, the devotees of the Lord are purified souls. As soon as the devotees surrender unto the lotus feet of the Lord sincerely, the Lord accepts them, and thus the devotees at once become free from all material contaminations. Such devotees are above the three modes of material nature. There is no bodily disqualification of a devotee, just as there is no qualitative difference between the Ganges water and the filthy, just as there is no qualitative difference between the Ganges water and the filthy drain water when they are amalgamated. So that means if Ganges water mixes with filthy water, it becomes purified. Whereas most people will say, well, that means it's all contaminated. Just like today, so many industries are pouring all kinds of poisonous things into the Ganges. And people say, oh, the Ganges is contaminated. And the Ganges is never contaminated. There may be certain parts that seem to be contaminated, but as long as the water is flowing, it's not contaminated. And the Ganges is a powerful river that's flowing all the time. But there might be sometimes parts of that flow are inhibited because of obstacles like bridges, like sometimes sharp curves and things like that. And it might seem as if there's some contamination there. But just like Prabhupada, when he would ask devotees to go to the Yamuna to get some water for him to drink, he would tell them, go to the middle of the river where the flow is the fastest. Right? So then it says, women, merchants, and laborers are not very intelligent, and thus it is very difficult for them to understand the science of God or to be engaged in the devotional service of the Lord. They are more materialistic, and less than them are the Kiratas, Hunas, Andhras, referring to people from Andhra Pradesh, Pulindas, Pulkashas, Abiras, Kankas, Yavanas, Kasas, etc. But all of them can be delivered if they are properly engaged in the devotional service of the Lord. By engagement in the service of the Lord, the designative disqualifications are removed, and as pure souls, they become eligible to enter into the kingdom of God. The fallen girls under the clutches of Bhaumasura sincerely prayed to Lord Sri Krishna for their deliverance, and their sincerity of purpose made them at once pure by virtue of devotion. The Lord therefore accepted them as his wives. In other words, he's marrying girls. And the Vedic tradition is so strict that if a woman, if a young girl stays away from home even for one night, she's considered fallen and not eligible to get married to a high-class person. That's how strict. And here are girls who were kidnapped and most probably defiled by this demon, Bhaumasura, and Krishna marries them all. And thus their lives became glorified. Such auspicious glorification was still more glorified when the Lord played with them as the most devoted husband. The Lord used to live with his 16,108 wives constantly. He expanded himself into 16,108 plenary portions, and each and every one of them was the Lord himself. In other words, every one of Krishna's expansions was non-different than his original form, even though now he's expanded into 16,108 forms. The Shriti Mantra affirms that the Lord can expand himself into many. As husband of so many wives, he pleased them all with presentations, even at a costly endeavor. He brought the Parijata plant from heaven and implanted it at the palace of Satyabhama, one of the principal queens. If, therefore, anyone desires the Lord to become one's husband, the Lord fulfills such desires in full. Okay, so that makes sense. Even though these girls, it doesn't make sense from the so-called strict followers of the Varnashram Dharma, right? Because these princesses were, first of all, kidnapped against their will, because Bhaumasura overpowered the kings and stole the princesses, which were daughters of kings. But because they beseeched Krishna in their prayers, Krishna came, liberated them, and then asked them to go home to their parents, and they explained, we can't do that. We'll never be able to get married. No one will marry us because they say that we live with this demon. Of course, against their will, but still. So they said, you have to marry us, Krishna. And there's like a lot of them, right? Almost 16,000 of them. And Krishna agreed. He married them all, made palaces, very opulent palaces for each one, and expanded. The first 8 or 10 are special ladies that he married that were not necessarily defiled by this demon. But most of them, close to 16,000 or maybe 16,000 exactly, were these ladies who were defiled or at least living away from home under the control of this demon. And he marries them all and treats each one equally with a beautiful palace, and he gives each one 10 sons. Right? Okay, so now the next verse goes to another level. It says, and the English translation, at the same time, this is 1:11:19, 1:11:19, so it's far away from 1:10, the previous verse, 1:10:30. And it says, at the same time, many hundreds of well-known prostitutes began to proceed on various vehicles. They were all very eager to meet the Lord, and their beautiful faces were decorated with dazzling earrings, which enhanced the beauty of their foreheads. Now he's talking about, Sukadeva Goswami is talking about prostitutes. Prabhupada writes, we may not hate even the prostitutes if they are devotees of the Lord. He didn't say all prostitutes. He said if they are devotees of the Lord. Even to date, meaning even today, even up to today, there are many prostitutes in great cities of India, that's a fact, who are sincere devotees of the Lord. By tricks of chance, one may be obliged to adopt a profession which is not very adorable in society, but that does not hamper one in executing devotional service to the Lord. Devotional service to the Lord is uncheckable in all circumstances. It is understood herewith that even in those days, about 5,000 years ago, there were prostitutes in a city like Dwarka. They're talking about the prostitutes in Dwarka, Krishna's town or city that he built in what is modern Gujarat, where Lord Krishna resided. This means that prostitutes are necessary citizens for the proper upkeep of society. The government opens wine shops, but this does not mean that the government encourages the drinking of wine. The idea is that there is a class of men who will drink at any cost, and it has been experienced that prohibition in great cities encouraged illicit smuggling of wine. Similarly, men who are not satisfied at home require such concessions, and if there is no prostitute, then such low men will induce other women, into prostitution. It is better that prostitutes be available in the marketplace so that the sanctity of society can be maintained. It is better to maintain a class of prostitutes than to encourage prostitutes within society. In other words, it's better to have a closed system of women who want to do that type of thing or who have been forced into that situation than to open it up to anybody, any woman, which is the condition today. And that condition is supported by what you call supported by different types of abortion on demand. It's very easy to get an abortion today, and many women take that position of being aborted, killing their own child. And then all kinds of pills and all kinds of different instruments to avoid getting pregnant. But still, the population is increasing, although they have all these ways of killing children in the womb. Sri Bilba Mangala Thakura, a great acharya of the Vishnu Swami Vaishnava sect, in his householder life was overly attached to a prostitute who happened to be a devotee of the Lord. One night, when the Thakura came to Chintamani's house in torrents of rain and thunder, Chintamani was astonished to see how the Thakura could come on such a dreadful night after crossing a foaming river which was full of waves. She said to Thakura Bilvamangala that his attraction for the flesh and bone of an insignificant woman like her would be properly utilized if it could be diverted to the devotional service of the Lord to achieve attraction for the transcendental beauty of the Lord. It was a momentous hour for Thakura, and he took a turn. That's a nice phrase, took a turn. In other words, changed his ways, right? It's a typical English type of phrase. Took a turn towards spiritual realization by the words of a prostitute. Later on, the Thakura accepted the prostitute as his spiritual master, and in several places of his literary works, he has glorified the name of Chintamani to show him, who showed him the right path. In the Bhagavad Gita 9:32, the Lord says, O son of Prita, even the low-born Chandalas and those who are born in families of unbelievers, meaning families of atheists, and even the prostitutes shall attain perfection of life if they take shelter of unalloyed devotional service to me. Because in the path of devotional service, there are no impediments due to degraded birth and occupation. The path is open for everyone who agrees to follow it. So now we see the real meaning of this verse, 9:32. Mam hi partavya pasritya yepisu papayonaha striya vaisas tata sudras tepiyanti param gatim. Sri means women. So, O son of Prita, those who take shelter in me, though they be of lower birth, women, Vaishyas, merchants, and Sudras, workers, can attain the supreme destination. So, there are devotees who have read this, and they say, this is horrible. Prabhupada is misogynist. There are devotees that say that, and there are plenty of people outside, especially women, who read this and says, "Oh, your guru is a misogynist." Misogynist means not someone who gives massages, but someone who hates women and is vile toward women. But now we know what the real meaning is. He gives an alternate meaning. He says, in the Bhagavad Gita 9.32, the Lord says, O son of Prita, even the low-born Chandalas and those who are born in families of unbelievers, meaning atheists. Chandalas are people that eat dogs, right, and are very low class. And even the prostitutes. So he's talking about a very small class of women who are prostitutes. All women are not prostitutes. So he's talking about a specific case, a specific type of woman who's engaged in prostitution. Shall attain perfection of life if they take shelter of unalloyed devotional service to me, because in the path of devotional service there are no impediments due to degraded birth and occupation. The path is open for everyone who agrees to follow it. So there were prostitutes in the time of Krishna. They were living in Dwarka. They were practicing what people say today, the oldest profession in history. Anyway, they were there, and I guess all of them were devotees of Krishna, and they were very happy to see the Lord, and they were always thinking of the Lord. And then he gives an example of a lady who was a prostitute, but who became the guru of Bilva Mangala Thakura, one of the greatest Vaishnava acharyas in the history of the world. So then Prabhupada writes, it appears that the prostitutes of Dwarka, who were so eager to meet the Lord, were all his unalloyed devotees. And thus, they were all on the path of salvation according to the above version of the Bhagavad Gita. Therefore, the only reformation that is necessary in society is to make an organized effort to turn the citizens into devotees of the Lord, and thus all good qualities of the denizens of heaven will overtake them in their own way. So that is our mandate. That's what we should be doing. And you don't do it by staying at home. You have to go out on Sankirtan and spread the word about Krishna and spread the mercy of Krishna in the form of Harinam Sankirtan, in the form of Mahaprasadam. He says that, therefore, the only reformation, that means changing a person's life or taking a turn, as he said, reformation, that is necessary in a society is to make an organized effort, that's Sankirtan movement, organized effort, to turn the citizens into devotees of the Lord, and thus all good qualities of the denizens of heaven will overtake them in their own way. So then, once they hear the Harinam Sankirtan, once they chant, once they take prasadam, then the virus spreads, because they've been inoculated with this poison of Krishna consciousness. The poison, one poison cancels another poison, right? So this poison is more powerful if someone will practice it. On the other hand, those who are non-devotees have no good qualifications whatsoever. However, they may be materially advanced. So it doesn't matter if someone is very rich or someone is very beautiful. It doesn't really matter. If they're not a devotee, they are considered very low class. But if they are a devotee, even though they might be engaged in some kind of a profession that seems to be abominable, they should be respected, and they can actually help others, like Chintamani helped Bilbamangal Thakur. The difference is that the devotees of the Lord are on the path of liberation, whereas the non-devotees are on the path of further entanglement in material bondage. The criterion of advancement of civilization is whether the people are educated and advanced on the path of salvation. So, this is the whole point. Going to school today does not really educate a child. Going to school today does not educate a child. If anything, they become more ignorant because they're taught about atheism, they're taught that there's no God. If you want to believe in God, that's a fairy tale. But real knowledge is science and mathematics and chemistry and internet, engineering, and this and that. So the kids get overwhelmed by this overriding tsunami of false information, and they spend the rest of their life being a gada, right? An ass working to make demons rich, right? So, is there a solution to the problem? Yeah. The solution is one should bring their children to the classes and sit with their parents and hear the philosophy of Krishna consciousness spoken by genuine devotees, and hear Prabhupada's purports and Krishna's verses, and be educated. That's the way you're going to be educated, by hearing and chanting, and hearing and repeating. You're not going to be educated by listening to all kinds of speculative theories that, in fact, that just confuses a person, and they'll go off in the wrong track. So there's more to this, but I'm going to stop right there with this, because there are other things I want to say. So we're talking about now in 1st Canto, 14th chapter, 3rd verse, 114, 3, 4, and 5. You can learn to, you don't have to go to a astrologer, you don't have to go to a psychic reader. You simply have to read Srimad Bhagavatam, and you will understand how to read signs of auspiciousness or signs of inauspiciousness. Now we're going to hear about how to read the signs of inauspiciousness today. Yudhisthira, who sent his brother Arjuna to Dwarka and was waiting for him to come back and give him news about Krishna. And Arjuna stayed there for 7 months without sending any news back. And Yudhishthira became very, let's say, apprehensive. That's a nice word, apprehensive. Apprehensive means you're expecting that something may be wrong, or something may be, let's say, like a tragedy. You're not sure, but you're expecting it. What does it say?
It says anxious or fearful that something bad or unpleasant will happen.
Yeah, see? So Yudhishthira became very apprehensive because it was 7 months with no word from Arjuna. So now let's read this. He, meaning Yudhishthira, saw that the direction of eternal time had changed. And this was very fearful. There were disruptions in the seasonal regularities. Yeah. The name for that now by the demons is climate change or global warming. When they talked about global warming, it was snowing in April in Washington, D.C., and freezing cold. So then their whole narrative about global warming seemed ridiculous, right? So they had to change it. This only happened a few years ago. They had to change it to climate change, right? You see how they try and control people with language, right? So it's a famous trick. It's just like there was a massacre of Armenians by the Turks, but the Turks refer to it today as, oh, it was a transfer of population. Yeah, but it just so happened that all the people that were transferred were murdered, right? They don't call it a massacre, they call it transfer of people, transfer of population. As if it's, it sounds neutral and almost nice, right? But actually, it's diabolical. They forced people to leave their homes on 24-hour notice. They could only take what they could carry. They were not allowed to have horses or carriages or anything like that. And they were killed, murdered. And the final destination was Del-Erzur, which was a desert town. So even if they got there without dying, they died there out of starvation and thirst. So it was horrendous. And my mother and my great auntie had to go through that. Anyway, they somehow or other survived, only because my auntie was kidnapped and put into slavery, sexual slavery. And my mother was such a young girl, only maybe 5 years old, when after everybody died in her family, she was left alone on a street in Del-Erzur. And fortunately, one Turkish family picked her up and adopted her and brought her up as a Muslim. And then later on, when she realized, when the Turks lost the war, she was forcibly taken away from that family and put into a Christian orphanage. So we see language can be very misleading. And these people, they say climate change. It sounds neutral. It sounds like it's something normal, but it's their speculation because they're making this false narrative in order to control people and make money and take money away from people. So anyway, it says here, he saw that the direction of eternal time had changed, and this was very fearful. There were disruptions in the seasonal regularities. The people in general had become very greedy, angry, and deceitful, and he saw that they were adopting foul means of livelihood. Well, that sounds like today, right? But this is like 5,000 years ago. When civilization is disconnected from the loving, this is Prabhupada now, when civilization is disconnected from the loving relation of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, symptoms like changes of seasonal regulations, foul means of livelihood, greed, anger, and fraudulence become rampant. The change of seasonal regulations refers to one season's atmosphere becoming manifest in another season. For example, the rainy seasons being transferred to autumn, or the fructification of fruits and flowers from one season in another season. A godless man is invariably greedy, angry, and fraudulent. Such a man can earn his livelihood by any means, black or white. During the reign of Maharaj Yudhisthira, all the above symptoms were conspicuous by their absence, but Maharaj Yudhisthira was astonished to experience even a slight change in the godly atmosphere of his kingdom, and at once he suspected the disappearance of the Lord. Right? So you don't have to be an astrologer, you don't have to be a soothsayer, that means like a psychic. You simply have to read Bhagavatam. You'll be able to see things and understand things by symptoms. So then it says, foul means livelihood. A foul means of livelihood implies deviation from one's occupational duty. There are prescribed duties for everyone, such as the Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, and Sudra. But anyone who deviates from his prescribed duty and declares another duty to be his own is following a foul and improper duty. So a Sudra who wants to be king would be considered very foul and improper, quest or desire, because he doesn't have the qualities to be a king. You see, and that's what's happening today. Like you look at someone like Trump. He was a very fallen person. Not only him, Biden is also a very fallen person. His middle name is China, Joe China Biden. Right? He's purchased by the Chinese. And then before that, you had Mr. Obama, and then before him, Bush. All these people are fallen people. You know, they're not, and of course, Big Billy Clinton is another one, very fallen person. During his time, with all his scandal with his girlfriends, kids were talking about it in school. That's how it trickles down, right down to the young kids talking about his trysts, and it's very disgusting. So therefore, when people deviate from their duties, and the duties are, you have the varnas and the ashramas, there are duties, just like our devotees. Someone might be a businessman, but still, he or she becomes a devotee, and now they have two duties. One is Vaishya, and the other is devotee. So they have to follow both sets of duties, right, in an honest way. So this is what is being meant here. So a man becomes too greedy for wealth and power when he has no higher objective in life, and when he thinks that his earthly life of a few years is all in all. So if you're convinced that when you die everything is over, there's nothing after that, so you see it sets the stage. There's no God, and when you die everything is over. You become a very low-class person. Right? Ignorance is the cause of all these anomalies in human society, and to remove this ignorance, especially in this age of degradation, the powerful sun is there to distribute light in the shape of Srimad Bhagavatam. This means, look, we should understand that the number one way to educate our children is to bring them to class to hear Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam. If you don't do it, you're ignoring your duty as a devotee, because your duty is to train your children to become devotees also. And the way to do that is they should regularly attend classes. But if the parents don't regularly attend classes, how are you going to educate your kids? Just like we heard the other day, that one kid is in college and some people are coming to him and to read Bhagavad Gita, but he himself has not really studied the Bhagavad Gita, right? He never came to any of the classes. So now that's good that he's starting now, but you have to hear it. And I'm going to show you tomorrow where Prabhupada says hearing is not enough. You have to actually, reading is not enough. You actually have to hear it also. Reading is okay, there's nothing wrong with it, but you don't really learn very much by reading. You learn much more by hearing and then repeating. Okay, we'll stop right there. Are there any questions?
So Maharaj, so we said that here the change in our constitution, not prescribed duty. So
Yes.
considering like Shudras to taking Vaishya is considered a changing duty here?
Or Sudra becoming a king or a
Shudra
president
becoming
of a country.
But is it just constrained to confined to only Vaishyas and Shudras? But if we have to go to Brahman, is it okay then? So
No, if you're not, look, there are kids that are born in Brahmin families who have never been serious about being trained as a Brahmin, but they claim they're Brahmanas. They claim that they are Brahmanas. That's what that's an aberration, right?
Yeah.
If someone puts a sign up, doctor of medicine, and you go to him to get treated, and later on you find out he never went to medical school. He never got a doctor's degree, right? He's not trained.
Yeah. So after training, maybe you can change. That's like, for example, we say that like as a devotee. So even if you are Shudra or Kshatriya or anything, you can be devotee, and then that ultimately devotee can be treated as Brahmana, right?
Of course.
So we are actually changing our prescribed duties.
If you become a devotee, but your business is being a prostitute, there's no hindrance there.
Okay.
There's no hindrance. And the example is the prostitutes in Dwarka.
So what should we understand
But
this way?
if you're just a prostitute, then that's a vile thing. That's degraded.
Yeah. So through devotional service, I mean, it is okay. I mean, through devotional service, you can change. That's what we
Absolutely.
understand.
That's
Yeah.
our whole philosophy.
Yeah.
That's the whole philosophy, that through devotional service you can change completely.
Okay. Yeah.
Haribo. That's the philosophy of the Bhagavad Gita. In fact, that's part of what I'm going to explain tomorrow. Yeah. But the process of devotional service is so strong that the pure devotee of the Supreme Lord can enable people of all lower classes to attain the highest perfection of life. This is possible only when one takes shelter of Krishna, as indicated here by the word vyapasritya. One has to take shelter completely of Krishna. Then one can become much greater than the great jnanis and yogis. The devotional service of the Supreme Lord is the only process by which all problems of all classes of men, meaning people, can be solved. Everyone should therefore take to Krishna consciousness and make his life perfect. These are in the Bhagavad Gita, in the two verses. I'm going to talk about these verses tomorrow again. 9:32, 33, and 34. And then even before that, 31, let's see what it says. Anyway, we'll go over it tomorrow. Haribo.
Hare Krishna Maharaj.
Yes.
So Maharaj, so you have mentioned about changing the words in 932 verse.
Yes.
So, but you have given the reference, Prabhupada has given this reference in Canto 1, 932, and he's quoting there as well. So
He's giving what's called an alternate translation. But the alternate translation is in the introduction of Bhagavad Gita also. In the introduction, page, in my book, 31, it It's in the introduction near the end. He gives an alternate definition. He says, thus the Lord says that even a merchant, a fallen woman, or a laborer, or even human beings in the lowest status of life can attain the supreme. So he specifically says fallen woman. And in that verse that you just mentioned, it's prostitutes.
Yes. So Maharaj, if one is trying to change 932, then they have to change everywhere, like in Canto 1, introduction, then it's not just one place.
No, you don't have to change anything.
No, I'm saying whoever is
simply
trying
have
to change.
and hear Bhagavad Gita spoken by people who know it, right?
So changing one place.
See, that's why you have to hear from people, because it's very easy to misinterpret things.
Then they have to change whole.
They would have to change everything, yeah. But as soon as you change, you violated your mandate as a genuine disciple, right? You're no longer a genuine disciple because you're changing the words of the pure devotee. Okay, let's have the Aarti. And I have to leave. I have to go. Yesterday I had to do something. I wasn't able to do it. I have to leave early today. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Every day, something else comes up that we are able to learn something new. Huh? No.
Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Jaya Prabhupada. Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Jaya Prabhupada. Shri Guru Charana Padma Kevala Bhakti Sadma. Bando moi savadhana mate. Jahara prasade bhai e bhavatoriya jai. Krishna prapti ho jaha hate. Guru mukha padma vakya chitete koriya kya. Shri Guru Charane Rati Aise Uthama Gati Jai Prasade Pure Sarva Asha Chakudana dilo jai Janme janme Prabhu Shay Divya Gyana Rida Prakasito Prema Bhakti Jaha Hoite Avidya Vinasa Jate Vede Gaya Jaharacha Rito Shri Guru Karuna Sindhu Adhama Janara Bandhu Lokanata loke raji vana Aha Prabhu koro doya Deha more pada chaya Ebe jasa gu sukti bu vana Prabhupada Patita Pavana Prabhupada Patita Pavana Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namine Nama Om Krishna Pristaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Sunyavadi Pastyatya Deshatarine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Nirvishesha Sunyavadi Pastyatya Deshatarine Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare Jaya Prabhupada 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 Jaya Guru Deva Jaya Guru Deva Jaya Guru Deva Nitai Gaura Hari Bol Nitai Gaura Hari Bol Nitai Gaura Hari Bol Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai
Divine Grace, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Ananda Ko Devotional Ki Jai, Namacharya Srila Dasakru Ki Jai. Premise Ko Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shraddha Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaura Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. Shri Radha Krishna Gop Gopinath Shama Kunda Radha Kunda Giri Govardhan Ki Jai. Shri Vrindavan Dham ki jai, Shri Marpa Dham ki jai, Shri Ganga Devi, Yamuna Devi ki jai, Shri Bhakti Devi, Tulsi Devi ki jai, Samaveda Bhaktivinda ki jai, all glory to assembled devotees, all glory to assembled devotees, all glory to assembled devotees, all glory to Shri Shri Guru and Gauranga, all glory to Shri Prabhupada. The lotus feet of spiritual master are the only way for contain pure devotional service. I bow down to lotus feet with great awe and reverence. By his grace, one can cross ocean material suffering and obtain the mercy of Krishna. My own wish and conscience is purified by the words emanating from his lotus mouth. Attachment to lotus feet is perfection to fulfill all desires. He opens my dark eyes and fills my heart with transcendent knowledge. He is my lower birth after birth, for me ecstatic prema happiness by indignant joy. The Vedic scriptures sing of his character. Our spiritual master is ocean mercy. Friend of the poor and Lord and master of the devotees, O master, be merciful to us, give to the shade of lotus feet. Your fame is spread all the three worlds. We take shelter